Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority in the city of Milton Keynes. The meeting today will be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube channel. If I could just ask people that are on screen, if you could just mute your cameras during the meeting, and then if you could come online when you want to speak, that would be appreciated. Okay, just to kick off, apologies for absence.
Councillors Bagg, Banks, Chappell, Hussain and Councillor Lambert is joining online.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. Can I ask if there are any questions as to accuracy from members? Happy for me to sign as an true and accurate record. Thank you. Sorry. Moving on, matters arising from the previous meetings. There are none. Which moves us on to item number 4, disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests that members wish to declare? Take that as a no. Thank you very much. Okay, you have in front of you the chairman's announcements. Just a few things that I wanted to draw your attention to. Firstly, the USAR National Canine Capabilities event, which was held recently at Westcott Park. Which involved around 15 dogs. I'm assuming Hugh took part. Doesn't actually say it in the announcement, but Hugh was there, so that's good. I know also that members visited, Councillors McCain and Hall visited the Thames Valley Fire Control Centre, which was appreciated. I know also members went recently to the Safety Centre in Milton Keynes, so thank you for doing that. You'll also see in the chairman's announcements detail of a visit and delegation we had from Kenya. Very welcome. And can I just finally place on record, not finally, but I'll place on record my thanks to Katie for organising, as ever, an absolutely fantastic Christmas carol service, which was really well attended. We had all of the mayors from, well, not all of the mayors, we had the mayors of Aylesbury and Milton Keynes, as well as the chairman of Buckinghamshire Council, the Lord Lieutenant and the High Sheriff, and it was a fantastic, fantastic evening, so thank you. Members will also have noted that before the meeting, myself, the Chief Fire Officer, the Regional Secretary from the TUC and our local FBU rep just signed the Dying to Work pledge, which I think we'll also cover a bit later on as well, won't we? So those are the Chairman's announcements. Any questions on the Chairman's announcements? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Slattery.
And I'd like to put on record thanks for the Fire Authority efforts in Buckingham recently. We've had a lot of floods, and again, thank you for the team for coming out and supporting members of the public and being there to and supporting in their times of troubles. I think we shouldn't underestimate how much that is appreciated, and we have it suffered extensively in Buckingham, and just like to put on record my thanks to them.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Slattery. Thank you. Put that on record in the minutes. So moves us on to item number 6, petitions.
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 7, questions.
None, Chairman.
Okay, we're rattling through. We'll move on to item number 8 then, which is the extension of the BFRS automatic fire alarm pilot. I'll just hand straight over to Stuart.
Chairman, authority members, this paper is to request an extension to the automatic fire alarm AFA pilot, which we are currently running. The pilot is for an initial 6-month period until January. We request an extension to continue the AFA pilot through to the 12th of February 2025. Since the pilot started on the 8th of July, we have only attended AFAs at high-risk properties. High-risk properties we define as those where there is sleeping risk or the risk is high during firefighting actions and operations. In the past 4 months of the pilot, we have seen a 34.9% drop in our attendance at non-domestic property false alarms. This means we can attend other incidents, carry out risk critical training and carry out other fire service activities. We have now run a 6-month AFA public consultation to see if the public and our employees wish us to continue with the changes to the AFA response. The results of this consultation are due on the 20th of December. And we will bring a paper to you, the Fire Authority, on the 12th of February to hopefully confirm the permanent changes to the AFA response. By extending the pilot until the 12th of February Fire Authority meeting, this will mean we will not have to change back to our previous response model prior to the consultation results being announced here. Changing back to the original response model in early January will require additional work by Thames Valley Fire Control Service, which will then be doubled if we then accept the new changes to the response. This request is asking you just to continue the pilot that we're currently on. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Councillor Carroll.
Yes, obviously it's a positive for the force, positive for the public, so I'm fully supportive of this. Keep it short, and it's been a great pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Just through you, Chair, when we get to the end of February, I expect the report which come back will do an evaluation of the benefits of it so that we can assess how we need to go forward with it. I know that will happen, but we need to ask if it will happen.
I think as the report sets out, that's exactly what happened.
But that's why I'm asking it.
Yeah, no. So I think the report's setting out clearly that's what's happened, and the reason is to enable the information from the public consultation to be analysed and also aligned with Oxfordshire and Berkshire as well. So that's good. Can I just ask a couple of very quick questions? So hugely supportive of the pilot and pleased to see the early results. Can you just confirm for us that there haven't been any issues during the pilot phase, because it's not covered in the report? And similarly, do you know if Berkshire and Oxfordshire are seeing similar benefits from their pilots?
Berkshire and Oxfordshire have both gone live. We have a meeting planned for January to discuss early results for them. I don't know at the moment. We have had issues. The Open University has raised issue with us. Transport for London had recently raised issues, and it's more about those organisations and how they are responding to our pilot. All of these issues have been worked through with our protection departments. The Open University one, I believe, is now successfully resolved. So, yeah, we're dealing with everything as they come on a case-by-case basis.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. With Gary and Anne, we went to the control centre last month, and the benefits are already being seen there by the operators, and they made it very clear that it's not impacting the way that things were turned out dramatically. But if we don't keep going with it, we will be not aligned with the other two services, and that will cause problems and may even impact negatively on how we can actually turn out. So I'm very much supportive of going forward.
Thank you. Can I just check as well that it says on the timeline on page 22 that the extension to pilot to be processed to run to the 13th of February, and we're asking for it to be until the 12th of February. That's question number one. Is that just an error to make sure it's the 13th rather than the 12th? And the next question is, it says about implement and communicate the agreed process for 1st of April 25. What are we still looking to have that approval process between the 12th of February up until the 1st of April as well? So just to get some clarification.
Sure.
This will be brought over to the 12th of February Fire Authority meeting, ratified here, so that we go forward from the 13th of February, hopefully as a continuation of that trial from if the Fire Authority are approving it on the 12th of February, I would hope that goes forward continually from then.
Okay, so we're being asked to approve the recommendation of an extension to the automatic fire alarm pilot from 8th of January 25 to the 12th of February, until the 12th of February 2025. We're happy to do so. Thank you. This is on to item number 9, the people strategy. Councillor Hall to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to introduce the 4-year update on the people strategy for 2020 to 25 period. And I'll hand over to Ronnie and Ollie to talk us through it.
Thank you, Councillor. Good morning, Councillors, Chairman. The People Strategy 2020 to 2025 was approved in October 2020, with the service reviewing annually and providing an update to the authority following the review. This update outlines the closure of our People Strategy 2020 to 2025 and its alignment with our new Community Risk Management Plan 2025 to 2030, which incorporates our updated people strategy. The new CRMP is designed to address emerging risks and enhance community resilience. Our updated people strategy is integrated into this plan, ensuring that our workforce is equipped to meet future challenges. Achievements to note: key area 1, equality, diversity and inclusion. A culture board has been established to work with staff and networks, providing strategic leadership, policy oversight and fostering a supportive environment to embed EDI into the service's core values and operations. Key area 2, employee engagement. The service moved to an annual survey in 2024 and following a robust tendering process, awarded real-world employee survey to run our survey for the next 3 years. 2024 People Awards took place in July and it was attended by over 100 employees with positive feedback. Key area 3, organisational development and resourcing. The Organisational Development Department have launched a behaviour and leadership framework. This ensures that our workforce embodies our core values of integrity, compassion and respect, which is fundamental to being an excellent fire service and maintaining a health and positive workplace culture. Key area 4, training, learning and development. Training Delivery Plan 2024 to 2027, developed to detail how our operational staff will maintain skills and competency in core areas in accordance with fire standards. And key area 5, employee health and wellbeing. Confidential reporting line introduced via SafeCall, an independent service for employees to raise concerns about potential wrongdoing confidentiality. This update demonstrates the service's commitment to enhance its services culture, engagement, development and wellbeing. Thank you for your time and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Baker.
Thank you for the report. I thought it was very positive, but I did wonder whether the fire service was doing itself a disservice in comparing the characteristics of its workforce to the general population, because that seems like a very broad brush comparison. I wondered whether maybe a comparison to other emergency services or even the armed forces would be a more useful benchmark.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it's good to benchmark from different sectors, so we can definitely take that forward as part of our forward planning and definitely consider that.
Any other questions, comments from members? Councillor Stutchbury.
Firstly, thank you for the report, and it's most of these things are a continuous journey, aren't they? Within the report, when I read it the other night, there was a section on pay equality, and then there was a section on diversity. Do you anticipate, as we move forward, that those areas which are at difference, not through deliberate, it's just how it is, we're going to actually be able to iron them out in the round moving forward, because this is a ongoing work. It isn't an answer immediately. Do you anticipate that as we get to X 2 years in, 3 years in, we'll start to see that come back a bit, so that we do see some diversity of employment and some and the pay levels similar, which you did mention in the report that you were working on it.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, that's our commitment, obviously, to look at fairness and equity across our pay scales. We are looking at our reward and recognition approach as part of that. Obviously, EDI is a key consideration as part of that, but that is our forward journey. And as always pointed out in the paper, as we move into the new People Strategy 2025, that is a key commitment for us moving forward.
And just to kind of add to that, we are doing a lot of work in terms of our ED&I and our protected characteristics with the workforce to encourage them to share their protected characteristics. Other papers that we've brought previously highlight our work on positive action and how we've brought more diverse members of the public into the service. So there is lots of work that we're doing, and that forms part of our Inspector Action Plan, all the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Last month, it was a pleasure to meet Middleton Fire Station. They invited me there. I met one of our diverse ladies. She started a business model for the Buckinghamshire Fire Authority. And we had a good chat about how diversities and officers is working on, talking with the local businesses, including diversity, local mosque and church. So we had a good chat how she's going to go and engage with the local businesses across Buckinghamshire here. And I gave some advices how to contact local mosque and everything else, going to give advice about safety issues and, you know, all the fire equipment, make sure they're in place. So it is important to see more diversity getting involved into a fire authority across the board. And as we all know, the recent report came back from Inspector, didn't help us very much. I'm I'm confident we're going to looking forward to recruit more people from a diverse background to help people across Buckinghamshire.
Yeah, obviously, we're fully committed to work on that basis. I think it's really important we engage with our communities, we listen, we put forward our core values, but it's really important we network as well. So that's a key commitment for us moving forward. So.
Okay, just one observation and question for me. So Appendix 3, as ever, fantastic to read the impact of the apprenticeships work, and congratulations again on the being ranked 56 in the top 100 apprenticeship employers and highest fire and rescue service. And I see as well, which I apologise because I think I missed this, the National Outstanding Apprentice Projects Award at the NFCC. It's very good. Also, just wanted to place on record, I'm sure my thanks and that of the authority to Santander and Milton Keynes City Council for the levy transfer funding, which is great to see. Kind of leads to my question. What is it that we're doing, what have we done, and what are we intending to do to both thank, recognise and keep those ongoing relationships with Santander and the City Council in terms of the apprenticeship? And are there any other local businesses that we could be approaching or local bodies we could be approaching for further support?
In terms of Santander and the relationships moving forward, obviously that's something we want to keep, that core relationships. That's something we will prioritise. In terms of creating new networks and new contacts, again, that's a key priority for myself and the team to make sure that we raise our profile, we look at the best practice work we've undertaken and highlight that. So that community interaction, that working with local business, raising our profile is a key commitment for us, because I think it not only benefits the service, but it benefits the community and ultimately enhances our reputation.
Could I suggest we potentially, because National Apprenticeship Week is probably about 8 weeks away now, could I suggest we perhaps look at an event at National Apprenticeship Week where we get Santander, the City Council and some others together, meet some apprentices, and kind of that's potentially a way of doing that and highlighting the transfer, because I think it's a really good example of the community supporting the service, and we should make sure we make a big deal out of it. Good, thank you. I think we are being asked, I think I know, just bear with me, to get to it. This is the biggest pack of papers I think I've ever had. So we're being asked to just note the People Strategy 2020-25. We're happy to do so. Thank you very much, and thank you again for the work on it. Moves us on to item number 10, the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Annual Report 23-24. Hand over to Councillor McLean.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As it says in the forward, I'm pleased to be rising my 5th forward for the annual Health and Safety Report. So I'm not going to say much more than that in terms of the detail. However, it's a very pleasing, very positive report that we're able to bring to members for their consideration. Let's hand over to Callum / Doug. I don't know which of you two is going to lead on that.
Good morning, Chairman, Councillors. Thank you very much, Councillor McLean. This report, pages 65 to 86 in your bundle, is the annual Health, Safety, Wellbeing Report for 23-24. The report this year covers on the report performance overview, employee wellbeing, risk management, working with others, health safety training, and a look forward, as well as our performance indicators. Very much mindful of the time that it takes, which is inherently built into the process to get Home Office data back, and the need to balance keeping the report current and up to date with our performance. We have taken a slightly different approach this year in what we've covered within the report. The performance data is based the same as the Home Office data on the financial year. However, we've taken the decision this year to also include all key work streams and key achievements from the previous 12 months and up to the date in which we authored this report. By taking this approach, what we will do is we will reduce the likelihood of bringing forward next year information that is up to 20 months old. So this performance in terms of key achievements is a broader look back. The safety event statistics for 23-24 identify that there have been a decrease in the number of personal injury safety events by 27.3%. This is an excellent result, which reflects in a significant reduction in the injury rate from 90.5 to 63.7 per 1,000 employees. The reporting of injuries, dangerous occurrences and diseases regulations also has a decrease in 23.1%, as well as equipment damage falling by 11.1%. All very, very good. However, other points of note are, as we have had an increase in the number of vehicle incidents, which are also being tracked through the Health Safety Board. There's also a decrease in the number of near miss reports, and that's something we would like to see a higher proportion of. And more detail, as you will see, is contained within the report. On another note, with regard to performance data, we introduced line manager notifications. Visor is our electronic system which we manage, store, record and monitor our health and safety performance and injury rate on. We've introduced a change to Visor whereby now managers are being notified when people within their staff, within their group, haven't achieved the KPI for completing a safety event report. For a level 1, low level safety event investigation, it is 2 weeks. For level 2, it's 4 weeks. Following the introduction of this automated elevation of reporting, we have seen a notable increase in improvement in our target. We are now seeing nearly 79% of our safety event investigations being completed within that those key performance areas. This has been in place now for 6 months. We're anticipating that that will continue to improve and we'll get a much better performance on that in the next 6 to 12 months. And finally, in the last section, Appendix 1, page 82 to 86 of your report, highlighted in yellow are our Home Office statistics, which you will see we have demonstrated improvements in 5 of the 7 areas, which again is a further good news story. I'll more than happily take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. So just before I hand over to members, just wanted to obviously the on page 7, what caught my eye was the act of violence against the firefighter.
Yeah.
Which was the member of the public throwing a blow to the face which hit the visor, which is clearly unacceptable. Could you just clarify, what did that lead to the individual being charged? Because it wasn't clear in the report.
I don't have that detail to hand, but I do know anything like that. We do take really seriously. We work in partnership with the local police. I could get that information and come back to you.
Could you? I think we'd want to be understand that there was the Thames Valley Police charged and what happened with that incident, because I think we'd all say that's unacceptable. And then just, sorry, I should know this, but I assume a slow speed manoeuvre is just a non-blue light traffic manoeuvre. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for the report. I think it was page 12, where you went into contaminants and the risk of contaminants in employers. You also mentioned within that report the other factors relating to that. How can I be assured that the actions within the report match the aspirations of the FBU manifesto, in the sense that the FBU manifesto cited contaminants in the workplace, and it also cited many other things in that of actions which we wanted to progress? It would be useful in the report if we could see where those actions would be taken forward out of the manifesto to show that we actually recognise it, and to also so we can track its progression, because that was an equally valuable report which we had about 12 months ago, and I'm keen to see that that actually starts to work its way into our processes, and we can evaluate that we actually have noted it, and we can then have the conversation back with the FBU about how we've actually progressed those elements within that manifesto. Because if we don't do that, we're not actually recognising the report, and that would be a misstep, a mistake, and wouldn't be appropriate in my view.
So, Councillor Stutchbury, we actually have an agenda item a bit later on, which is the.
Councillor
Stutchbury, let me just answer the question. I'm going to hand over to Callum in a second. We have an agenda item a bit later on, which is the FBU improvement agenda, which is covering a number of those points. And I'll hand at that point. I'm also going to be inviting Chris Wycherley as the FBU rep to speak and contribute during that, so we can have a deeper conversation in that part of the agenda on that specific issue, which covers a number of areas of the FBU manifesto. But Callum, is there anything particularly you want to pick up on that from the health and safety perspective?
No, I can give the councillors an absolute assurance that we treat this with the utmost seriousness. Safety of our staff is paramount. We, at a local level, have got a contaminants work group, which health and safety representative bodies are actively involved in. In a sub-regional environment, when it comes to the procurement of equipment, PPE, personal protective equipment, breathing apparatus and the likes, that is looked at a sub-regional level. At a regional level within the South East region with the Fire and Rescue Services, the chair of the South East region represents the whole of the South East region on the national contaminants work group, which feeds into the national NFCC work on contaminations, which then circles back around. We've got a meeting next week in which contaminants is on there with a recent update. So just to sort of round that off, we are looking at this through a very inclusive and comprehensive lens.
Thank you. Councillor Dake.
Thank you very much. This is a very good report and I can see a lot of improvements here. The question for me is on the training, the staff training, and related to the decrease in, injury, everything, stated on page 5.69. So my question is, can you just off the cuff, 3 reasons that you have noted that easily, quickly, why we have had this decrease? Why do we have this improvement, that you can easily relate to? And following on from that also, comparatively, would you say we are on par with our neighbours on training and improvement? Because if we are not, we don't want to lose our staff to our neighbours. We want to make sure that they stay with us because there's that opportunity to improve, to be better. So we're doing so well on our spending on training. Is that because of that good training that we're seeing this improvement? Is it related? And what 3 quick reasons would you say we have done so well?
There's a number of reasons. The training investment, we've invested, as it says in the paper, additional funding this year into the training and the development of our own staff. And that's a journey that we continue to be on. Where we are seeing reports historically, which are perhaps the event, there hasn't been an intervention earlier. What we're seeing is a decrease in the consequence of some of those things. So as part of the training and education, what we're seeing is the preventative piece of health and safety. In my head, health and safety is prevention more than the reactive response part. So by investing more in the training and the education and the awareness for a range of staff across the whole organisation, as you'll note in the report, that goes across the whole organisation, from firefighter across to the chief executives, the directors and the likes. What we're starting to see is a better and an improved awareness around where earlier interventions can reduce the likelihood of the occurrence in the first place, which therefore results in a reduced occurrence of the events. And forgive me, apologies, there was a second question. With the collaboration with the teams within we work very closely with our neighbours. We do peer reviews on health and safety systems, processes, management and the likes. And we meet regularly within the whole of the South East region. And as I've mentioned, similar to the contaminants, not just contaminants, but a range of health, safety and occupational health and safety matters. We are actively involved in sub-regionally, regionally, and also with the National Fire Chiefs Council, NFCC. And that's where information is not just passed into, but brought back to us so that we can pick up on any learning that has come from another area that we can perhaps benefit from within our own sector.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just back to the point on page 7 on the acts of violence against firefighters. I think it's imperative that the authority and the service are seen to take a very robust line of zero tolerance against offenders. And I really do think that we should be seeking the severest penalty possible under prosecution and under the law against offenders. So I would like to see this come back to the next authority so that we can have an update, please, Callum, so we understand exactly what's happened and if nothing's happened, why nothing's happened.
Thank you. We've got that noted to Master Rising. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you. Can I just move back onto page 5 where it mentions on the display picture about vehicle damage has gone up 34.2%. Is this a case of something that could have been avoided, or is it a case of, for instance, residents have been parking cars in unsuitable areas which has caused these vehicle damages to be up, shall we say? It's just so we can know what we can do to help if it's a case of that it's from the fire authority side, or it's something that we can try and educate residents to make sure that they're out of the way when it comes to vehicle damage, so we don't have because everything else on this performance guarantee is going down. We want to make sure that that is as well if we can help it. And my second part is that I really wanted to thank for the inclusion of the equality, diversity, inclusion officers roles have been put in, and I understand that they're relatively new, and that we've got a virtual revisit coming up in January 2025. And I guess it's just a case of that because it's a new role, and because I'm new to the committee as well, I presume that when it comes to the next committee, we'll have an update that we can say on how that role is going, if possible.
Are you taking the first one? Do you want to perhaps take the second, please? Yep.
I'll gladly take the, so in terms of the first question, there's two parts of that. So the increase these in this particular measure is not because of they do happen, but the notable increase is not because of vehicle parking. However, where we do get areas where we've identified or it's been reported to us that residential or other types of parking may cause a restriction or an obstruction in an emergency response situation, the local station will do a campaign in partnership with other local agencies to identify the potential risks associated with that and target that particular area. But going back to this, that's not the causation of that. But I do thank you for your offer of support where we get areas, and that's something that maybe the operational commanders will take up if that does become more apparent in the future.
Just to follow on from that then, what is the cause of the vehicle damage going up then?
Slow speed vehicle manoeuvre.
Sorry, Callum, I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry, slow speed vehicle movements.
Do you want to pick up
Predominantly slow speed
update?
vehicle.
Okay. Do you want to pick up the update on? Oh, you're going to do that, Anne.
So just in terms of the people and culture officer, they started in June this year. They became permanent. Well, just completed their 6 months probation. So basically, they've been working through all of the ED&I objectives. There is going to be a report on the inspectorate. So a lot of those kind of the work that they've been working on are part of the report. But yeah, they are getting on really well. They've set up the culture board, staff networks, looking at ED&I. They've really been getting out to all the stations, doing station visits. There's training, bystander training that we're doing. There's a whole list of things that they're doing. So yeah, it's a new role, but we're really thankful for everything that they brought. They've been working with stakeholders, as I say, getting out to the stations, but also across all the other departments as well, working with the communications, really making sure that ED&I is embedded into everything that we do. So yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you about that afterwards.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Told you there, Chair. Two things, one of which I wish I could answer the question about whether the final incidents went through to prosecution, but this is last year's report, and I know at the time I was very keen that we made sure that it was taken to the full course of the law, but I can't find it in the minutes because it's that time. But I will pick up as the lead member for this. I'll pick this up this afternoon. We have a health and safety committee meeting, make sure it's raised there. And secondly, on the slow speed manoeuvres, I just hope that the new deputy chief fire officer can take up the mantle of the previous one, because it was his bête noire about slow speed manoeuvres. long live his memory, live with us.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll move us on. So the recommendation is that the health, safety and wellbeing performance as detailed in the health, safety and wellbeing annual report for 23-24 be noted. We're happy to do so. Thank you very much. Moves us on to item number 11, which is His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services 23-25 updates. I'll just hand straight over to Anne-Marie.
Thank you, and good Morning. Yeah, still in the morning. So this paper is a summary of papers previously shared at both the Executive and Overview and Audit Committee. The HMI-CFRS paper provides an update on the service's progress against our inspection action plan and that recent HMI visit. All prevention actions are complete, but to ensure these changes have been embedded, a number of KPIs are now in place that are reviewed on a regular basis alongside staff engagement. All protection actions are also complete, and in a similar way to prevention, KPIs and staff engagement will continue to be reviewed to ensure the changes are embedded. Since the submission of this report, one further EDI action is complete, and the 2 remaining actions are in progress and on track. To review our progress, HMI-CFRS completed a revisit in September 2024. The outcome letter from the visit is in Appendix 1, page 93 to 96 in your pack. The HMI noted we have made good progress across all causes of concern. They signed off all recommendations related to prevention and have been successful. They signed off all the recommendations related to prevention and they signed them off as being successfully completed. And this allowed them to close the cause of concern in relation to prevention. HMI-CFRS will revisit again in January to focus on protection and EDI. We'd like to thank all the staff for all their work in progressing these actions, and it has been great to see the acknowledgement by the HMI of their work. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Carroll.
Yes, obviously this item comes to my committee at audit, and can I just again give a personal thank you to Anne-Marie and the team. It's an immense challenge. We know this over the last few years, and certainly recently you came to our committee and we questioned it, we scrutinised it. So can I just say thank you very much for you and your team for doing this immense challenge. And we are getting really pushing forward with this, aren't we?
Yeah, firstly, echo those thoughts. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for the way that you're pursuing this matter on our behalf. The report, in its conclusions and in its definitions in the letter, which is dated, it makes some recommendations due within 28 days. Well, those days have moved forward to November, and it mentions in the second sort of paragraph recommendations in 28 days to do with increased awareness and equalities, which is passed forward now because those days have passed. And in its conclusions, it's about governance action plan and progressing against causes and concerns, which you have been diligently working for it. But in the final paragraph of the letter, they state that we will be continuing to monitor and progress against the remaining causes of concern, and they're intending to come back in the new year, which is the most important thing. Do you feel that we are in a good position in the new year to be able to respond to those outstanding concerns? Because it'd be really nice if we could be in a position that this was no longer a feature. And I know you've been working very hard to achieve that, but that's easy to say, do that. Achieving it is quite a bit more complicated. So do you believe when they come back in January and examine the work we've done, we would be in a much better position than we were when they came in October?
Yes. So in terms of, this is going to sound really weird, in terms of a much better position, no, we were in a good position when they came in September. We just hadn't had staff on protection embedded for long enough. So what they're doing is coming back in January to see that the work that they saw back in September has been embedded in protection. So that's the good part. We were in a good place. So yeah, I am really confident in terms of the work that we've done on protection, from our risk-based inspection programme through to introducing a new role around training, getting people engaged in terms of the reasons behind some of what we do and focusing on the right work. Yeah, protection, we're in a good place. EDI, again, we're in a good place. They're going to have a focus group with a number of staff from across stations and our support teams, and also going to meet Ronnie and interview Ronnie. And that's what they're looking for, is the message they get at the top versus the message they get at the bottom. It's the same, and everything in between is the same. The only thing that I am not sure on, and we are kind of pushing the HMI, is whether they will close a cause of concern that is related to people in a revisit. So one of the things we have always been told is that to fully understand the people impact, they need to do a number of interactions with a broad range of staff, and they only do that through a full visit. But we hope that with all the evidence we have already shown them, and the interviews that we will have in January, that they will be quite clear what they're not closing when it comes to EDI, or whether they can close off 3 of the recommendations and leave 1 open. So that's the only bit, and that's not something that's within, that's kind of HMI's rules rather than our rules of whether they will close something in a revisit that's related to people.
So I think it's a good question, Councillor Stutchbury. I think it's worth just stressing, I know we covered this last meeting when we did the update from the Fire Performance Oversight Group, but HMI talk consistently to me and the Chief Fire Officer about sustained and sustainable. And I think with protection, there's been a huge amount of work done, but actually we need to recognise it was only in October, November last year that the issues were brought to light. So actually the progress that the service has made on protection, I think, has been really strong. But from the HMI's perspective, what they've not had is enough time to see that it is sustained and sustainable. So, you know, hopefully that's what they'll see in January. But I think it's a good question. Any other comments? If not, just one thing from me. I couldn't help but notice, because I sadly read these things, that London Fire Brigade recently had their inspection visit, and obviously they were a precursor to us in terms of entering the engage phase. And one of the areas where they had clearly made progress was on the EDI objective, where clearly following the report that they had a couple of years ago was a significant area of challenge for them. Just be good to understand, have we done any work just to understand what London Fire Brigade have done, things that we can learn from them, because clearly that was quite a sizable shift for them over the 2-year period.
I've not met specifically with London. One of the challenges we have is that ours is quite EDI specific. London's was more about culture, so it is slightly different. The one thing I would say is we are meeting with both Gloucestershire and Avon that are in that engage process that also have they do have some similar EDI, and we are sharing our progress of what works and what doesn't work. The other benefit is that through having the People and Culture Officer role, he has attended a number of network events and is picking up kind of best practice from other services there. But it's something we'll consider to kind of meet with London, understand what they've done.
Yeah, thank you. So we did, and Anne-Marie wasn't involved in this, but I think Mick went down to London and spoke with them, and I had a meeting with Andy Rowe, the Commissioner from London, fairly early on to just understand what they were doing. Obviously, London is a big machine, and my understanding is they had many millions of pounds to also throw at investing in culture. But Anne-Marie's right, I think it is slightly different, but nevertheless, we have gone far and wide to look at good practice, just for reassurance, really. And actually, London weren't doing anything that we weren't already doing, so I'm fairly confident we're doing okay.
Any other questions, comments on this? We're happy to note the update. Thank you very much. So that moves us on to the member update on the Fire Brigades Union Improvements Agenda 2024. So members will recall that last year we had a presentation from Chris, who I'm delighted to welcome to the meeting again, where they set out the FPU set out their improvements priorities for the year ahead, and we committed that we would bring that item back, which I know that members will be pleased to see we have done. The paper sets out some of the progress in areas like decon, recruitment, retention, etc. What I'm going to do is I will hand over to Simon first to just run through the report, and then Chris, I'll invite you to say a few words afterwards. That's okay, and then we'll open up for questions. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank councillors. So this report provides an update to members on service progress against the 2024 Fire Brigades Union Improvement Agenda, which was, as the Chairman said, initially presented to the Fire Authority at its 6th of December 2023 meeting. The agenda covers 10 areas with further specific requirements within each of the 10 areas. So throughout last year, officers have considered these requirements and wherever possible incorporated them into current and future plans to help improve and enhance the service. So just to draw out some achievements to date, significant progress has been made in implementing decon policies and improving PPE management through a dedicated contaminants project. At the time of submitting the report, the project had 157 actions, 114 of which are complete, 38 are in progress, and 5 are still to start. Recruitment and retention strategies have been reviewed to ensure the service is able to attract, recruit and retain more on-call staff on a range of tailored employment contracts. And we know this is a key focus for us all going forward. Enhanced capabilities for dealing with rural firefighting and extreme weather events have been established and utilised throughout the summer of 2024. And improvements in crewing levels and skill sets reviews are ongoing and improving our resourcing picture. We've already spoke about the appointment of a people and culture officer and the benefits of that, and the implementation of a culture board and active bystander training are helping to foster a more inclusive environment. Constructive dialogue with the FBU continues to strengthen industrial relations, and paying conditions are reviewed in line with NJC negotiated settlements to ensure they offer the best possible pay for staff. Plans for proposing a state-of-the-art training facility at Westcott Venture Park and increased training budgets are underway, and facility improvements are being prioritised and implemented to support EDI goals. And health and wellness initiatives are being reviewed and developed to support the overall well-being of firefighters. So just in summary, as we move forward, our focus will be on continued constructive work alongside the FBU wherever possible. By focusing on these areas, we aim to create a safer, more supportive and more effective working environment for all our firefighters. Take any questions.
Thank you. Chris.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for the invite back. Yes, as Simon touched on, there's a load of really good work that's gone on against the improvements agenda that we presented last year, which are detailed at length within the report. I think some of the areas of focus which we'd like to see continuing on into the future are around decon. Whilst work is improving and there is improvements within service, there's still gaps in terms of cancer screening. Our PPE contract position does not keep us in step with emerging technologies around contaminant management against traditional laundering and PPE. There can sometimes be some blurred lines in regards to advice and our policy and procedures in that area, but this is all work that's going on within the working group. With a document released recently for consultation, which will provide lengthy feedback towards and hope for some changes. Again, some of our facility positions on stations don't necessarily cater best practice in terms of laundering of workwear and firefighting equipment, and that's something we'd like to see changed into the future and continue to progress. Around point 4, in terms of crewing, we have seen much better crewing levels in terms of our frontline appliances, less so in terms of our retained position. Whilst that is improving, we'd like to see that continuing to improve. We still have no formal plans in place for the positive crewing of the TL at Wickham, which I'd like to see addressed as soon as reasonably possible. In terms of paying conditions, whilst that is largely geared towards national negotiation machinery, we still have a lesser rate for nighttime overtime rates, which has not been addressed and sits outside the nationally agreed contract arrangements. Again, infrastructure, stations and facilities, there's loads of good work, and they're not things that can be addressed within a year's time. And it's good that plans are underway. I note that there is a proposal into the next year that will have a full station improvement programme in place, and it will be good to see what the benefit of that are, or that is. And there's a number of areas within point 10 which I think me and Simon have regular conversations in terms of what is needed and what can be done better. And there's some areas within that do cover into our 2025 improvements agenda, which I'm happy to touch on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what we'll do, I'll ask, once we've had the discussion, questions from members, perhaps Simon, if we come back for you just to pick up any of the points that Chris has made as well. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, and thank you to Chris for your oral update. It would have been really nice to see a written update from the FBU in this report. I think it's really important that your response as somebody who's actually on the ground doing this job and communicating with colleagues on a daily basis is matched against what the authority is saying it's doing, because that helps us keep track of any gaps in the improvement. So in the future, it'd be really nice to see that in writing.
Thank you. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you. Can I just add on where it mentions about employee rewards programs, which benefit towards aims. I just want to stress this one, that especially when it comes into mental health and well-being of staff, is that we want to make sure that they're appreciated for doing their roles. And when we've got point 7 that's mentioning about pay and conditions, and it's mentioned that 4,000 plus worse off from what's outside of what can be done from the national NGC framework on pay progression and the negotiation side of things. So is there anything that we can make sure that we can implement? I mean, the union is asking for this. It's something that they're asking for to make sure that they're doing to the best benefit of doing their job and for their own welfare. So I just want to stress if that's something that we can make sure that we can look at implementing as feasible as possible.
Okay, what I suggest is we'll pick these up in a sort of broader final summary, if that's okay, rather than back and forth. So,
firstly, thank you, Chris, for coming back. This is a long time ago since we saw you. Perhaps we should see you more often. The report, which is on the left-hand side of my screen, I've got 2 screens open here looking, and I look here, and in 4, there's concerns around the crewing. And it seems like we are adrift to where we need to be on the crewing of our staff, crewing against the whole authority. And it just mention my colleagues' pay and conditions point. While the crewing's not quite where we would like it to be, the pay and conditions have slipped quite significantly since 2010. And as was mentioned, it's a 12-15% lower than they would have been, which is across the public sector, not just here. But I am interested in your views on as mentioned earlier, the progression of the contaminants, because it was clearly stated in the FBU report manifesto about the risks of contaminants to the staff, being the firefighters who are actively involved in what we must say are incidents that no normal person would normally be involved in, which is a fire, chemical spills, and the changing nature of the British industry. There's more chemicals and more electricity and more substances as we go forward. Do you feel, from an FBU point of view, that we are getting somewhere near where we need to be in making sure that we know we've bought new equipment for different things, but are you feeling that we're buying the appropriate equipment? We are putting the resilience in the decon area, and as was mentioned, and we were discussing in previous meetings, you may not have known, we were concerned in the Wickham site, which was mentioned earlier, that there was some equality being moved forward in how female firefighters could actually clean up after it with the contaminants, and I think there was some little bit of progress made on that. So really, though I read the 2 reports side by side, I think in the authorities report, it doesn't directly cite, in my way of reading it, to the points you've made in your correspondence, which is really useful, because I do remain concerned on all those points, because if we don't get those points right, point 2, which is your point about retaining good relations, they all fall away. So are you content that we're making the progress? And if we ain't, on what points would you think we ought to be focusing on the audit committee or any other committee of the firefighting to make sure that we actually come more to the way of the aspirations of the firefighters manifesto?
Thanks for your question. I think decon is being taken seriously. It's been picked up by the NFCC, and all the recommendations and actions that are taking place as part of the contaminant working group are being measured against those. I think what is required is more systemic change and a mindset change in terms of how we operate. So that could involve a more progressive and collaborative approach to relief and detachment from incidents a lot quicker, and rotation of staff to facilitate showering. When I talk about cancer screening, that's about preventing firefighters from developing really aggressive forms of cancer. as part of the DCOM report, it talks about esophageal cancers. And once you start to show or become symptomatic of that cancer, it's very difficult to then treat that. So if we're not picking up cancer progression early enough, it's very difficult to then go on to live, basically. And what it does show is that firefighters are significantly at risk of developing cancer, specifically against national averages. So it's behaviour changes. There's a lot of education piece that needs to go in, not only to authority members, management, but also members of staff. And that message needs to be driven home really quickly. So yeah, to answer the question, yes, it's being taken seriously. I think some of the more systematic changes that need to take place, and because they're very difficult to change, are a bit slower in progression.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Sullivan.
Was really addressing what I was thinking was the decontamination campaign and talking about the contaminants. You've answered that question. It's about dealing with those things when they happen, because obviously, you know, when you're actually working on sites or in situations, you're not always going to be fully aware of what contaminants you've got around you at the time. So I think you've addressed that, just that last conversation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris, for the report. Very thorough, very more details. Page number 11, 4.5, ecology diversity. Progress has been made in the coastal fire rescue survey ensuring workforce and communities, diversity, range and prosperity experience in hand. It does make a difference to our fire authority, and in the higher moral and moreover commitment as it made by FEU. Is really more detail. One thing I would like to say, 2025 and 26, I think is scheduled for full review. And looking forward to see what progress has been made in last couple of years, and 26, 25 hopefully we'll have more. So engaging with the internal expert will provide additional insight. I would like to know what kind of internal expert you will be providing on that.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
Internal expert will provide additional insight and recommendation.
I think Councillor Khan, your question is probably more for Simon to answer, so we'll wrap that up in the broader answer if that's okay. Next, I've got Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. In a section on crewing, there's reference to an alternative shift pattern being trialled at Amersham. Interested to know what that is and any initial comments about how well it's going, please.
Sorry, who's that aimed at? Sorry, that question. Who are you aiming at, Chris, or the
sorry, I'm aiming that.
Fine, we'll wrap that up into the
officers. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other questions before I do mine? Councillor Paddock.
I'm afraid this is not a question, but it's a comment and a compliment. As majority, if not everybody, would appreciate what's been going on in the last couple of days. And I just want to sort of put it out there to say thank you to all the officers, because, you know, roadblocks, trees falling down, a recent incident, around here. The officers are doing a lot. And I know it's not just those in uniform, but those in the office as well. So it's just to say thank you on record to everyone for the work that you're doing. I know what my elderly residents are saying near nursing homes and how they feel about the last couple of days, for what everybody is doing, being able to respond in time, on time, to support people. So I just want to say thank you. I know we're grilling you, but you're doing a lot of work.
Thank you. Well said. Okay, just a few questions from me, if I may. So, firstly, just to note, I think I picked up from Councillor Stutchbury that you made a comment that the headcount wasn't where we wanted the headcount to be. I think if I've understood that right, that's a reference to in the original improvement agenda, Chris, you talked about an establishment of 320. What we did this year was, I know we discussed that and we took a decision that the best way to invest actually for this year was to invest in skill set over that 320. So sort of question, I guess, Chris, about do you feel that the benefits of that investment in skill set have been seen, which was around crew commanders, etc. What I've just asked the officers, I think when we go through the budget for next year, I would like to go back round our ability to move to a 320 headcount, and what is the what are the trade-off decisions we need to make? Where else might we need to invest? I think it's important each year we challenge whether the establishment is the right establishment. And then sort of further question for you, Chris. You referred to the fact that retained numbers weren't where we wanted them to be, and I think we'd all recognise that. It's a national challenge, and every time I talk to anybody from any other service, it's exactly the same challenge. So I suppose my question is there something you feel that we should be doing that we're not doing in that you could share with us? Third question, just on the so I think all of us want to see progress on decon. And I know we've had previously discussions about the decon units, which stations they're in, should they be in every station, etc. It'd be good just to get a bit of a feel, both from Chris and from officers, around what impact we feel that the BA project, which now I think is a full year in operation almost, what impact we feel that's had, and is there more that we need to do with that? And then I had a final question, which has just gone completely out of my head. Oh, yes. So again, I said this last year, and I just want to put it back on record. It's really easy in organisations that have underinvested in areas like facilities that a degree of acceptance of the environment builds in, and it requires organisational sort of energy to challenge acceptability. And I just want to place on record again, I think I speak for all members, we want a zero tolerance about facilities that aren't fit for purpose for firefighters, both in its broadest sense, but also from a inclusion sense. And so again, when we bring the improvement agendas for next year for stations, and I know we talk about this a lot, but again, let's make sure we're being ambitious and challenging around making sure that we're moving environments to where they should be and not accepting of things that have just built up over time. So there's a couple of questions there for Chris first, and then I'll ask Simon if you want, and others if you want to just wrap up on all the questions that have been asked.
Thank you. So I think in terms of the headcount specifically and being set towards 320, I think that would be a really positive move. I think naturally with our apprenticeship programme, we've sat above 300 for some time, and what that translates to is more appliances on the run and more people coming through the system that we need. And 320 seems to be about the correct sort of number to maintain our frontline appliances, as well as looking at our special appliances. Retained firefighting, like you touched on, it's a national issue. I think there are a number of things that we could do internally to work to address some of the issues with that. I think better management and better understanding of what the requirements are of that role, and putting the foundation work in to being able to facilitate people coming through the retained system and then becoming operational firefighters within that system. I think for some time we only planned one BA course for retained firefighters and then expected the system to flourish. We went through a period of time where we transferred everyone that we could possibly bring in from the retained system into whole time and didn't backfill anyone. And there wasn't the resources and the time and the effort put into maintaining that system, which is now why we're seeing the dip. And obviously a lot of that was down to financial constraints and what have you. Now's the time to really put a lot of energy and effort into maintaining that system, especially as we look to put up specialist appliances at retained stations. We need to ensure the crew model fits. And yeah, even down to some more user-friendly maintenance of being able to book off the run, understanding the expectation. There's a lot of work that can be done, and there's a lot of conversations to be had with that section. In terms of the BA project, again, that all centres around prevention and ensuring that our kit is fit for purpose and clean and usable. And it's difficult to quantify the benefit of that but it's knowing that it is the right thing to do, and mitigating those risks are the most reasonable and the most practical way of reducing firefighter cancers, and that's one step in terms of that journey.
Great, thank you. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so just to summarise, I think just going through Chris's points there, in terms of cancer screening, we will continue to work on this and get it right. So we have done some work there, and there's some more learning that we need to do to make sure that what we can potentially offer to staff in the future is the right type of screening. The PPE contract in 2018 was a big step forward in terms of fully managed service and the call-out service to make sure kit was clean. But we're starting to realise opportunities now for the next phase, and we're just lining that up with the procurement timelines, the right opportunity to improve PPE. And again, facilities on stations, really, really important to us. In terms of crewing numbers, yeah, the on-call is definitely a big focus for us. We know that moving forward. Last night, they offered really good resilience on an incident at Milton Keynes. It's just a fine example of how they can provide that resilience in addition to their local response. And the point on positively crewing the turntable ladder, this year, we're trying to really focus on the skills because we haven't got the flexibility to increase the establishment. And we will continue to focus in that area to see if we can leverage those improvements. In terms of facilities, I've always said that's really, really important. And it's just about balancing our resources against those priorities. So we've got priority for decon, priority for numbers of staff, and priority for EDI on stations, and we're just trying to get the balance right. Just moving on to the councillor's comments. In terms of Councillor Bailey's comment, yeah, we'll take that back in terms of a written update from the FBU, and I'll work with Chris to see if we can bring something back slightly different in future. Councillor Lancaster's point about employee rewards and reward and recognition plans for next year, I know that is on the agenda for Ronnie and his team for next year, so that's important. Councillor Stutchbury's comments about crewing, it is lean, we know that, but it's just balancing the budget with what our priorities are going forward. In terms of decon, we are aligned on these views. We all see it as a priority, and I suppose the best thing was if we could bring back a project update to members. If you'd like that, we can do that. And lastly, raising the questions that you asked around the skill sets and things, raising the crew commanders and the firefighter safety command and the shift patterns, the temporary shift patterns we've introduced have all been subject to collective agreements with the FBU and positive working relationships that have led to better resourcing, better management of skills. So that constructive dialogue that we've had and discussions has been really helpful, certainly from my point of view. And just to cap it off, I look forward to working through the 2025 agenda, which arrived in my inbox this morning.
Good. Thank you very much. So thank you, Chris, for joining us. And again, we'll let's bring you back midway through next year. We'll do an update midway next year, probably whichever the one is before the annual meeting. We'll look to bring you back just for an update, and we can go through the 25 improvement agenda then. So we're being asked to note the Buckinghamshire FBU 2024 improvement agenda service update. We're happy to do so. Thank you very much. That moves us on to item number 13, which is the Community Risk Management Plan. Before I hand over to Simon to introduce this, sorry, I'm handing over to Mark. Yeah, sorry, to introduce this. Obviously, members, this is probably the most important agenda item that we will do as an authority well, certainly this year, if not in the next 3 to 5 years, because a lot of the issues that we've grappled with HMI have come out of the fact that our previous public safety plan wasn't fit for purpose. So it's really important in this session that we leave confident that the community risk management plan that's been developed is going to enable us to deliver for the communities across Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, and is based on really clear evidence and understanding of the risks that we've got. So I'm really keen that this is a good, thorough session as members. So without further delay, I'll hand over to Mark.
Lovely, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Yeah, as the Chairman said, this document is fundamentally important because it sets our strategic direction for the next 5 years. And it'll be something we work to, and it's going to be a living document. It's not something that's going to be done once and filed away. It's going to kind of oversee everything we do and the direction of travel for the next little while. So the draft Community Risk Management Plan, or CRMP, was originally presented to members at the authority meeting in June 2024. I'll briefly recap some of the points before highlighting the consultation feedback, approach and subsequent updates to the document. So the CRMP explains how the service plans to mitigate identified risks, improve community safety by aligning available resources with key objectives and utilising them in the most efficient way possible. It also reflects our updated promise to the public, core values and core behaviours. As well as considering the full assessment of risks, it also addresses issues raised in the service's most recent HMIC FRS inspection report. Within the document, it details 3 strategic objectives supported by 3 strategic enablers. Strategies for each of these are embedded within the document itself to ensure they're fully aligned with the CRMP. The CRMP also contains details of the measures relevant to each objective and enabler so that performance can be tracked throughout the lifetime of the plan. We undertook a public consultation which ran for 12 weeks from July through to September. I'm really pleased to note we received 200 online survey responses, as well as running 5 in-person focus groups comprising a total of 44 individuals. On top of this, we ran internal staff briefings, including a town hall style online session, and we also engaged online and in person with key business groups across Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes. Myself, alongside the Chief Fire Officer, attended the Milton Keynes focus group. The level of enthusiasm and engagement was really great to see, and the feedback from participants made me feel really proud to be a part of this service. The consultation feedback summary, which is in Appendix 2, contains a detailed analysis of views of every area of the CRMP. For all questions, it's great to note that the proportion of residents which agreed with or provided a neutral response far outweighed any that disagreed with each question. As part of our internal audit plan, a draft of the CRMP was also shared with Mazars, who had undertaken some assurance work on the extent to which the CRMP met the fire standard and also addressed HMIT FRS comments about our previous public safety plan, which the Chairman mentioned. Alongside the consultation feedback, this report has also helped to refine important areas of the CRMP. Appendix 3 contains details of all the changes we've made since the draft version was presented to the authority in June, as well as the reasons for the changes. I won't go into detail on all of them now, but just to clarify a few themes. So we've clarified it's a high-level document and will be underpinned by a more detailed annual plan each year. The first of these plans will be presented to the Fire Authority in February. Furthermore, we've clarified how the functions of prevention, protection and response work together, as well as introducing a couple of new pages. Firstly, page 53, which sets out how our new internal governance arrangements will ensure the CRMP is delivered effectively, as well as page 63, which details our approach to future consultation and engagement now the initial consultation period has been completed. Within the cover paper, it does note that some of the public, through the sessions and through the online responses, were kind of worried that efficiency is an attempt to disguise the potential for future service reductions. I'd just like to reassure members this is absolutely not the case. We do have to set a balanced budget, but the plan is as far as possible to reinvest any efficiency savings within the service to ensure we maintain the best service delivery to the public. Although we're still waiting the results of the provisional settlement for next year, the MHCLG policy statement published at the end of November was more positive than forecast and provides the opportunity for further investment into the service to help deliver our CRMP and fulfil our promise of providing an excellent, modern and agile FRS for our community. Happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Firstly, thank you for the report. On your mapping, I think it's page 7. You list where the fire stations are and being totally parochial or local. Buckingham, though it has a daytime crew, only has a retained crew. And if you go to the next section of your report and you look at the next report down, which you're reading them in conjunction with each other, it does notice that staffing and and crewing is an issue. How do you feel about the natural progression of growth which we're going to have in North Buckinghamshire, probably more than they will in South Buckinghamshire? And are we resilient enough in our plans to be able to plan to facilitate some of the growth? I look at South Buckinghamshire and the percentage of full-time, whole-time pumps is hugely different than the amount of whole-time pumps in North Buckinghamshire. And as the growth is likely to be in North Buckinghamshire, we need to start looking at planning succession to grow some whole-time facilities in North Buckinghamshire, because we're relying solely on Milton Keynes and people crossing the border from Northamptonshire quite often to cover the Buckingham area, and we're very grateful for that. But I do think that if you look at the possible growth in the Buckingham development plan when that comes forward, and the possible growth in the MPPF, we need to really seriously start modelling what our future capacity is going to be. Otherwise, we'll find that we've got all the fire stations in one area and all the houses in the other. And Milton Keynes will grow, Buckingham's likely to grow, Winslow's probably going to grow hugely, and North Buckinghamshire is likely to get real capacity. And I look at this map and it's an historical position, but I don't see in the report how we can future plan that with this uncertainty about the housing numbers, but we have to be aware that it's going to take place.
Yeah, no, really good point, Councillor. So within our modelling, we do look at historical incidents, historical demand, but within our risk profile, we have also worked closely with both Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Council to look at their plans for future growth. It's something we're absolutely aware of. Within our commitment, we've said we'll maintain at least the same number of whole-time and day crewed appliances, because we're conscious there may be a need for growth in the future as development grows. And as talked about earlier, also lots of work to make sure that the on-call model is fit for purpose, because you use the example of Buckingham, which has both a day crew and an on-call pump. So yeah, we're really conscious that there's lots of growth planned. There's obviously ambitious housing targets. We need to make sure that we're prepared for that. Housing itself doesn't necessarily add more risk, because new housing is really kind of well engineered, very safe in terms of fire, but nevertheless, kind of the biggest risk is population. So we need to be aware of that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? A few from me, then, if I may. So I think it sort of builds a little bit on Councillor Stutchbury's question, which is, I think one of the criticisms of the previous plan was that, well, there's a number of criticisms of the previous plan, but one of the key criticisms and one of the reasons why we took the decision to bring forward the development of this CRMP is it proved inflexible to a changing environment. So things like the demands that the wildfires brought upon us, and some of the other risks that had developed. So I suppose my question is, are our officers confident that we've built sufficient agility and ability to be dynamic in the way that we respond to the risks in the plan? The stations, the pumps are a good example of that, and some helpful analysis in the pack. But if we have, for the unforeseen risks that will emerge, do we feel the plan is sufficiently dynamic and we're able to respond to it? I was pleased to see in the plan quite a lot of work done in terms of risk and understanding the risk. Again, could you just give us confidence that we've really tested, that we've done the very best practice in terms of the risk analysis that we've done, because that was the fundamental criticism of the plan last year. If you just bring out for members a little bit more on how we've benchmarked and challenged ourselves around that. I suppose my other question, just, and by the way, I really like the and I remember the discussion we had in the early draft. I really like the one pager with the objectives and the enablers. I think that's really clear, and it flows through in the plan really well. Just in terms of what you've set out, particularly with with the on-call stations and where the on-call stations are, again, it's just good to understand how much we feel we've got room to be creative in the next CRMP period about how we use retained appliances and retained firefighters. And there's a very helpful phrase about how it gives us additional scale-up resilience, or similar phrase, exact phrases. It'd be good just to bring alive a little bit, and you, Simon, you just referred to an incident last night in Milton Keynes. It'd be good just to bring alive for members what we really mean by that. How do we see that retained capability developing over the period, and what do you mean by that sort of additional resilience and scale-up that it gives us versus what traditionally we might have thought about? I suppose the final question would be, a comment was made by the Chief Fire Officer about London and the money that London had to deal with its issues. Do you feel confident that you've got the sufficient financial resources and capabilities to execute this risk management plan, or is there anything that officers feel you don't have that you would want from the authority? Because now is the time to speak or forever hold your peace on that element of it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. So I'll take those points in turn. In terms of it being dynamic enough to respond to changes in the future, yes, absolutely. As you say, there's kind of high-level objectives, enablers, and kind of quite concise bullet points which set out kind of what we want to achieve rather than necessarily the detailed steps of how we're going to achieve it. So we'll keep it under review. As I said, we'll bring forward an annual delivery plan which will give members more detail of these are the steps we're going to take in the coming year. And I think there's sufficient flexibility within the CRMP itself to enable that, and we can flex as we need to within that, within those broad strategic parameters of wanting to achieve our kind of promise to the public. In terms of risk and how we've assured ourselves on that, so we looked at probably about 10 or 15 different community risk management plans from other services, ones that had good feedback from HMRC FRS, and kind of took the best bits out of each of those. We've also used the new fire standard, which was published by the Fire Standards Board, to make sure we're following the best practice identified nationally there. So I'm confident that we've covered all our risks, because that was a concern noted by HMRC FRS in our old plan that we hadn't considered the full range. There's a list of about 80 or 90 different risks that we've gone into massive detail on. So I'm really confident to kind of put my hand on my heart and say, yes, we've done as thorough a job as possible on those, both in terms of current risks, but also future potential risks, as noted earlier, in terms of housing growth, emerging technologies and things such as that. In terms of the on-call, we do commit within the plan to review how best we use our on-call. Yeah, there is scope to be creative with how we use them. I think resilience is really the key point which you used there. So the dilemma we've got with the on-call appliance is, we've got some on-call appliances on whole time and day crew stations. Those are the ones that are the easiest to crew in terms of you've got the surrounding areas, they're near kind of big towns and stuff, give you really good resilience, but don't make much difference to your response times in terms of your first pump average. The ones that are kind of in standalone on-call stations are much harder to crew because you're drawing from a much smaller population. But those are the ones that help bring down the variation in response times between different areas, because they're in some more remote areas. So like you said, like Brills, the Olneys of this world. There's some real key stations we need to focus on to get those available. So it's trying to get the right balance between resilience and local response. And we've got lots of plans to come up with that. And it's not necessarily about immediate response, it's about tiered availability. Chris mentioned earlier about kind of relief crews and stuff like that. So it's how you use your on-call to relieve crews at instance. They can get showered within that 1 hour around the decon stuff. So there's lots of work to do and focusing on the on-call. And in terms of funding, I alluded to the MHCLG policy statement earlier. The real positive within that, from the authority's point of view, was that for next year, we will have the flexibility to increase our council tax precept by up to £5. That's worth an additional about £850,000 a year to the authority. What my recommendation will be in February to the authority would be to take that £5, use that extra money to invest a lot in the capital, in the facilities that we talked around, make sure our staff have got the best facilities, the best equipment. We've talked at previous meetings around the difficulties with Wickham. We're going to talk later about potential investment in a local training facility. So in terms of setting ourselves up for the future, making ourselves a modern, agile fire and rescue service, that would be my recommendation in February.
I think it's, I meant to say, but just to say it now, when I reflect back on the quality of the analysis that was first put in front of me when I arrived in the authority on on-call stations compared to the quality of the analysis and insight now, it's of another level and quality. So I just wanted to recognise that, officers. I really think you've moved thinking forward on that. So Councillor Hall first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I did some work with the staff a couple of weeks ago. We crunched some numbers, and it's worth the authority and the service noting that of our 300 whole-time firefighter complement, only 44 retain for us. So that's 260 odd. Many or most of them live in our communities. They choose not to retain. And I wonder if we can do some work around that as to understand why they don't want to retain, because actually they're trained, they're ready to go, and they would provide that extra line of resilience for us when we need it the most. So, you know, it's worth noting. I think probably a lot of you didn't realise that.
Thank you. Does anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to note. I talked about on-call helping with the resilience. It's also important to note in terms of our whole-time staff, 3/4 of our staff aren't on duty at any one point in time. So it's how we can make use of that in terms of resilience, in terms of whether it's retaining, whether it's recall to duty for major incidents. Yeah, they play a fundamental part in being resilient. We've seen that in the summer of 2022 when staff made themselves available to respond to that major incident when we had over 30 pumps engaged at a point in time. So yeah, that's a really good point to note. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Bailey next.
Thank you. You mentioned modelling with respect to population growth, and we've heard about you know, the floods, the storms, and there's some figures in the papers elsewhere about how the wildfire year was a bit of an outlier. But have we got any modelling data on climate change, and is that being integrated into future risk planning?
In terms of precise data, no. In terms of the flooding, on page 26, it shows us kind of where the main flood zones are, where the main risks are. Wildfires is a lot more difficult because you think kind of wildfires in fields and stuff, but actually some of the worst wildfires we had in summer 2022 were in kind of the more urban areas of Milton Keynes. We had a fire in a field really close to a day nursery. So it's really hard to predict where wildfires are going to appear. All we know is that in terms of climate change, those extreme weather events are becoming more and more frequent. So we need to be more prepared for those. And that's where we really need the resilience for the service, because we can manage day-to-day demand comfortably with our 12 on-call and our 12 whole-time and day crew stations. It's where we get these peak events, kind of 1% of occasions, where we need a lot more, need to be able to scale up quickly. That's going to become more and more frequent. So we need to be alive to that situation.
Thank you. From what Tracy said here, if we can look at really much implementing when it comes to climate change, because as you've mentioned, it's ever changing, but if we can have some sort of risk management strategy to be prepared towards that, it'll help us for the future, because we know it's an ongoing problem. And it's as you say, it's a risk. We can't manage it, but it's something that we can look at to make sure that it's further preventions for our teams, and also helps out when it comes to the unions for one of them that they've recommended in their report as well. My other part is in regards to when we're saying about increasing the diversity of the workforce, and it says it exactly as what I'm glad that we say, page 213, part 9, if that helps, 1.27, and that it shouldn't be coming at the expense of recruiting the best people for the job. And I 100% agree with that. But what I just wanted to make clear is that it says that we need to make sure that we're raising within certain communities and among certain demographics if it is to increase the diversity. What are we doing on terms of that? Because that's quite vague. So it would be nice to know what is being done, and if there is anything that we can look at, as in partners, for instance, the councils, and also major stakeholders such as Santander, who can help with promoting this sort of diversity, so people have got the intention, because we've got 260, I believe it was, who have not been having that retainment. And that could be a case of that, if they're not having retainment, it could be going to other communities to say, well, they don't retain you, we're not being looked into our proper scale, etc., etc. So what can we do to be able to improve the diversity side of things?
So if I take the climate change part first, we do have a climate and environment action plan, which was approved probably 2 or 3 years ago. Within that, there's both the mitigations that we're kind of putting in place to mitigate the impacts of our own actions on the climate. So in terms of using renewable energies, for example, which we do, but also kind of adaptations in terms of how we're responding to the changes in terms of incidents we're seeing. So we're introducing new things such as, so it's not in your papers at the moment, it's a separate plan. So such as introducing the rural firefighting vehicles, wildfire units, things like that, which are able to respond kind of into areas that traditional fire engines couldn't get to in terms of tackling wildfires more quickly before they get more widespread. In terms of diversity, as others said, in terms of the people strategy, it's something we're continually looking at. Our most recent round of whole-time apprentice recruitment was 7 males, 5 females, which is kind of the best split we've had in terms of that. But it's also looking at other protected characteristics as well, engaging relevant communities. Councillor Carr mentioned earlier about engaging with kind of local mosques, as it's done loads of work, going to like Eden the Park in Wickham, and just kind of spreading the word through that. We go to apprentice fairs, and it's trying to get that message out as wide as possible. And as colleagues have said before, anything councillors can do to help us spread that message far and wide, we'd really welcome that help and support.
Just to follow on from that, I only mentioned about the climate change report because, as Chris has mentioned in his report, to ensure that the climate change is added into their risk register as well. So if we can make them aware, that would help on that side, because it's one of the things we're asking for. I think it's a quite valid point that should be in there anyway, regardless if it's something that we've been doing 2 to 3 years ago. And when you said about diversity, and Councillor Khan mentioned about it going into mosques, that's something that's been mentioned. My question was to ask, what have we actually done to be able to get ourselves to that stage? It's stuff that we can plan for the future, but have we got it? Have we done anything of such up to that stage?
Just in terms of climate change and risk, on page 28, there is a summary of kind of risks, issues and opportunities. And one of those does note climate change likely and significant. So we have highlighted it on that. What sits behind this, which isn't in these papers, but was presented when we presented the original draft in June, was all the risk assessments sat behind that. There would have been a detailed bit on climate within that. I can recirculate that to yourself if that would be beneficial. In terms of stuff around diversity, I might ask if Hans can help me out on that question.
But just before we get to that, I think to be fair to Councillor Lancaster, that predated his arrival on authority. So if we could perhaps share that with Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you. Yeah, so the question just in regards to what we're doing about, making sure that our service is as diverse as it can be. So there's a number of things. So there was a paper that went to the Strategic Management Board on the 12th of November, just in regards to Have a Go Days, positive action. We've got a positive action statement that went to the Fire Authority in June. So there's lots and lots of work that we're going on there. Another area that we hadn't touched on is we went to Pride MK in September. And so just carrying on from that, we reached out to the community. We talked to them about, how could we work with them. So, for example, we've got Have a Go Day for on the 11th of January at Broughton for the LGBT community. We've got other open day, Have a Go Days on the 16th, 23rd, and 30th of January at Beaconsfield, Aylesbury, and West Ashlands. There's Have a Go Days that are happening with like On Call. The positive action work, as Mark said, we had for the last cohort of whole time, we had 7 male, 5 kind of female. And what we actually do as part of our whole time, we look at all of the the diversity of the applicants. Then we look at all of the stages throughout the process. So the kind of what I would say, the kind of the dropout rates, who's dropping out, why are they dropping out, what can we put in place? So, for example, we ceased the bleep test just to for this most recent cohort. We introduced behaviour workshops. There's lots. I mean, I could talk for a long time, so we can speak kind of afterwards. Other areas that we're looking at is as part of the station plans, the station service plans. So we've refreshed and renewed how they reach into the community as well, with a positive action, have a go days, just really getting the stations involved because they know their communities well. And with the people and culture officer, he's trying to go to as many kind of external networks as possible and kind of reach into those areas. So there's, I mean, I could keep talking all day, so we could speak afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. Picking up on again the weather-related events and page 26. I think we need to be very cognizant of the difference between fluvial and pluvial flooding. Fluvial flooding is within the infrastructure and will be there for a long time. Pluvial flooding, in a number of cases in my ward alone, you can be flooded and then 2 hours later there's no sign of it. And it's if we can push the local authorities in their local lead flood authority actions to promote getting the schemes that are already on the table undertaken, that will reduce, one, the impact on the people who've been flooded every time there's a heavy rainfall, and two, the demands on the service across the whole of our patch. Because you know, when we've had those heavy rains, some people remember what they were doing on the 23rd of December 2020 and the 20th of September 2023, so 24. There's a big demand, and we talked about demand earlier. If we can reduce the requirement to have those number of vehicles available to go out because other agencies are taking action, I think that would be good. So I think we should ask officers to liaise with the local authorities. So this is the impact it's had. I'm not quite sure how much information goes back into Milton Keynes City Council or Buckinghamshire Council about what level of service we've delivered in times like that, and that therefore they're under stress, we're under stress, but they're the organisation that are charged with sorting that out. It's not something we can go and do, but we can help them.
Does that get picked up in the local resilience forum work or not?
Certainly in terms of flood planning, yes, then we've got emergency plans for that. But the council is absolutely right. There's different types of flooding and they affect really differently in terms of response. Some of it will be a very quick and short response that would test our resourcing over a short period of time. Some of it will build up very slowly and we know it's coming. And there are other elements when you get into groundwater flooding where there's very little that we can do other than just help the community. So it's a really good point, and I think strengthening those ties with the local authorities is something that we can look at.
Thank you. I'm just remembering whether you did anything on the site, but I'll let you off this one time because I can't remember. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, thank you, Keith, for raising the issue about flooding. I think it is key that we get an understanding of both local authorities planning around this to see if there's a strength there or weakness. And it is important we raise this because you cite the dates, but we were only just a week or so ago in Buckingham underwater again in 2024. Milton Keynes and Buckingham share the same river, the River Great Ouse, and we share the same capacity issues, the same geography, and the same flooding issues. So I think this is something that going forward, because since 1998, when we had the first, what I call known flood, 2007, 2012, 2018, 2020 and 2024. So these events are becoming regular events, not 100-year events. So I think we do need to make sure that in our own capacity as councillors on our local authorities, we raise these issues. In our joint capacity, that we bring this to the appropriate people in the Environment Agency and everyone else, because this isn't going away. And it won't matter how many fire engines we have and how many crews we have, what we can't control is what's dropping out of the sky on a regular basis now. So I thank you, Keith, for raising it and colleagues, because I do think it's a separate item through the chair that I think we do need to sit down and look at based on those dates. And I'm sure in South Buckinghamshire those dates are probably mirrored, and it's going to be a problem that we need to plan a way out of. And picking on one thing, saying that's the issue, isn't where it is. We need to be understanding the flows of the rivers, the future growth and everything, rather than just pick on one thing for populism. We need to be actually very sensible how we get a way out of this, because we haven't got the facilities to, if the whole of North Buckinghamshire goes underwater, we haven't got the facilities. And if the whole of South Buckinghamshire and the Thames goes underwater, we still haven't got the facilities. So I think it's a big question. I really think it's important that you brought it up. And I think it's a non-political question in the sense that we all share the same responsibility to our constituents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stutch-Grinstead, and we'll note that and reflect on what we need to do. Right, I'm going to bring us to a decision on this. So the recommendation is that the Community Risk Management Plan 2025-2030 be approved. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much. Could I just ask Mark, if you just set out what the next steps are with this now that we've approved it?
Okay, so that's now approved. It will go live from the 1st of April 2025. What we will do in terms of, I mentioned annual delivery plans, we'll bring the first year's annual delivery plan to the Fire Authority in February next year, set out the details of that alongside the budget, so we can make sure the budget is aligned with delivering the CRMP.
Thank you very much. Right, so we have a number of late urgent items, and just for clarity, the following reports are required to be considered by the Fire Authority to meet the statutory backstop date of the 13th of December 2024 for the publication of audited accounts for the 2022-23 financial year. I should say, actually, I meant to cover earlier that at the beginning we didn't note apologies from Councillor Walsh, which we confirmed that he did submit some, so we can just note that. So I'm going to perhaps first just ask Mark if you just want to introduce late urgent item number 1, and then we'll go to Andrew, who sat patiently through, thank you very much, sitting patiently through an hour and 40 minutes of other items. We'll go to Andrew from Ernst & Young.
Thank you, Chairman. I think what I'll do is kind of one overall introduction for all the late urgent items, because they all relate to the same matter, which is to try and conclude the work on the statement of accounts for 22-23. As members will be aware, there's been lots of issues nationally with accounts and audit. It's nothing of the authority's own making. It affects all fire services, police services, local authorities, probably affects your kind of local constituent councils as well. So there's some proposals nationally to try and clear what they've called the audit backlog, and they've set certain backstop dates. The first of those backstop dates is this Friday in terms of getting the accounts done for 22-23. So this is why we're bringing it to the Fire Authority rather than the Audit Committee to try and meet that first backstop date. The first part of the late urgent items, number 1, is the report from Ernst & Young, which we're kind of obliged to consider. The second part is the management representation letter, which kind of gives E&Y the reassurance that we've considered as an authority, the items we need to consider. And then the third item itself, which is for members to approve to be adopted, is the actual statement of accounts. So I think if we hand over to Andrew, and then we'll go through the other items, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chair. Just checking you can hear me okay.
We can indeed.
Great, thank you. So as Mark has mentioned, in terms, I'll take the report as read, but to just give members a bit of background, this is the long-awaited outcome, as Mark referenced, made possible by legislation that was passed on the 30th of September, and a new National Audit Office audit code that allowed, it was enacted on the 14th of November and allowed audit firms to reset the backlog that Mark referenced. So just to summarise, we've therefore completed the following in relation to 22-23. We have completed our value for money work in relation to the authority, and the report that you've got in front of you is consistent with the interim reporting that we did to the previous audit committee meeting. As a reminder, the value for money work is our conclusion in relation to the arrangements that were in place during 22-23 and against the criteria in the NAO's code, and the summary of that work is in section 4 of our report. There are no new risks of weakness we've identified from the interim report when that was presented, and today. In terms of the financial statements, we performed minimum procedures required under the ISAs to be able to move to a disclaimed audit opinion in line with the legislation, Statutory Instrument 907. and these procedures mainly relate to the areas covered in section 2 of the report around audit risk and materiality, and our updating of our understanding of the business and risk of fraud. And therefore, because of the limited procedures, we don't have any control observations or audit differences to report. The background to why we're not able to perform the audit for 22-23 is on page 7 of the report, and we therefore move to disclaim our opinion to adhere to the government legislation previously referred to, and as Mark has said, this Friday's backstop date for 22-23 and earlier if relevant audit opinions. The wording of the opinion itself is in section 3, and we draw your attention to the wording for the basis of the disclaimed opinion, which links back to the reasons given on page 7. As Mark has mentioned, the other two urgent items are linked in terms of the signing of the letter of representation, which would be Councillor Carroll as chair of the audit committee and Mark as director of finance, and then the approval from you as a committee in item 3 of the 22-23 financial statements. Happy to pause there, Chair, and take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members? No? Okay, thank you. In which case, on this item, later urgent item number 1, we're being asked to note the contents of the report and the disclaimed opinion with the reasons provided by the auditors. We're happy to do so. Thank you. That moves us on to later agenda item number 2, the letter of management representation. Is there anything you want to add before we do this, Marcus?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, members and officers. The letter of management representation is a legislative requirement and a self-explanatory paper. The information contained within this letter contributes towards the auditors being able to form their opinion as to whether the financial statement give a true and fair view of the authority's financial position as at 31st of March 2023. As Andrew has mentioned, this letter is to be signed off by the Director of Finance and Assets, Mark Hemming, and also the Chair of the Overview and Audit Committee, Councillor Carroll, following today's meeting and before the backstop date of Friday the 13th. Thank you, and happy to take any questions on this paper.
Councillor Carroll, can I just ask, so firstly, thank you for the work that you and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee have done this year on all of this. Are you happy to sign the letter?
Put me on the spot. Of course I am.
Good. Are there any other questions or comments from members? We're happy to, so we're being asked to consider and sign the letter of representation to Ernst & Young in order for the audit opinion and conclusion to be issued. Are we happy to do so? Thank you. Moves on to item number 3, which is that the statement of accounts for the financial year ended 31st of March 23 be approved for signing by the Chief Finance Officer and the Chairman of the Overview and Audit Committee, Marcus.
Thank you. So the accounts outline the financial activities of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority for the year ended 31st of March 2023. It shows the financial detail of the services the authority have provided, together with explanatory notes, the resources consumed, and the financial position as at the end of the year compared to the previous year. When pulling together the accounts, the authority has followed the CIPRA Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting in the UK 2022-23, based on the IFRS, which is the code. The accounts are drawn up in accordance with the accounting policies, which are set out in detail in the Statement of Accounts Policy section. The responsibility of the proper administration of the authority's financial affairs is vested with the Finance Director, Mark Hemming, who is required by law to confirm that the authority's system of internal controls can be relied upon to produce an accurate statement of accounts. The accounts contain 4 main statements. Each of the 4 main statements is supported by disclosure notes, providing additional details to the figures presented. The 4 main statements are the movement in reserve statements, which shows the changes in the financial resources over the year, the comprehensive income and expenditure statement, which shows the gains and losses that contribute towards the changes to the resources shown in the movement in reserve statement, the balance sheet, which shows how the resources available are held in the form of assets and liabilities, and the cash flow statement, which shows how the movement in resources have been reflected in cash flow. The accounts also contain information regarding the Firefighters Pension Fund account, along with the narrative statement providing information about the authority, including key facts about the authority, the financial performance in 22-23, and corporate risks. Andrew has provided you with a detailed explanatory report, which also includes the auditor's opinion. This auditor's opinion has been added into the statement of accounts, ready for signing following this meeting. The statement of accounts are to be signed by Director of Finance and Assets Mark Hemming, the Chair of the Overview and Audit Committee, Councillor Carroll, and the Audit Partner, Andrew Britton, following today's meeting. Thank you and happy to take any questions.
Councillor Stutchbury.
I think it's important to thank you for the work you've done, firstly, and putting a set of audited accounts is one of the most important things we will do. And the question would be, after the meeting it's signed, what's the schedule of publishing our accounts so that they are freely available for scrutiny, outside scrutiny, which I think is key in public money, that we make that information available as we prepare ourselves to the challenges of the next financial year, which every financial year in any authority of any description is always a challenge. So it'd be useful to know the timescale of that being published so that we know that they go into public domain, which I think is key after they're signed.
Yeah, so they will be signed after this meeting and they have to be on our external website by Friday the 13th, and we cannot miss that date.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to that, in terms of publication, they've already been published as unaudited accounts for full transparency, as have the unaudited accounts for 2023, 24, sorry, so many years of accounts open at the moment. So they're all published, we've done all the work, so they're on our website for full public scrutiny, because as you say, transparency is incredibly important. So they're there for the public to see and ask questions at any time.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, anything you want to add? Councillor Carroll, anything you want to add?
No comment, but just as I echo I echo the compliments for the staff. They've worked very hard on this, and particularly through my committee, and there's high demands on our staff, and can I just thank you for what you've done again today to deliver this today. Thank you, and I'm happy to sign this.
So I think obviously the key thing that we obviously just need to understand is the significant weakness that was identified, which relates to the findings from the HMI report, which obviously I think we're all aware of. And I think, Andrew, just to clarify, that in a situation where you next review us and we've exited engaged, would you consider that to have been a material weakness addressed?
So for 23-24, EY are no longer the appointed auditors, so that would be a matter for the subsequent auditors to consider and take into account in terms of their reporting on the 23-24 year.
Okay, I was trying to tempt you to say yes, but clearly you're not going to. Okay, good. So we're being asked to, the recommendation is that the statement of accounts for the financial year ended 31st of March 23 be approved for signing by the Chief Finance Officer and Chairman of the Overview and Audit Committee. We're happy to do so. Thank you very much. Trying to find my agenda. That moves on to item number 14, exclusion of the press and public. To consider excluding the public and press representatives from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the reports and minutes contain information relating to any individual, and paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the reports and minutes contain information relating to the financial or business affairs of a person, including the authority, and on these grounds it's considered the need to keep information exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are we happy to do so? Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Chairman, I'm going to have to leave at 1 o'clock. I'm afraid I've got an alternative engagement.